Hello, everybody, and welcome to Strive and Thrive. My name is Mike Oliver, and this is a series of LinkedIn live episodes with the aim of enabling and empowering entrepreneurs to build businesses and achieve success in people, planet, and profit. On this series, you'll join myself and my friend Romesh as we invite interesting guests onto the panel and talk about the mindset, skills, and knowledges that are required for entrepreneurs to achieve, strive, and thrive in an ever-changing world. If I will now hand over to Romesh to let him introduce himself and look forward to speaking to Steph.
Hi everyone, I'm Romesh, the founder of the FD Consultant, which is a collective of part-time fractional finance director consultants. I'm a qualified accountant. I qualified with a top 4 firm many years ago. I've spent time at a FTSE 100 business in various roles. But since 2008, I have been a finance director or chief financial officer of a number of successful growing businesses. I'm really passionate about helping businesses grow, and hence I set up the FD Consultant. Welcome to our third episode, Strive and Thrive, episode 3, The Power of Networking with Stefan Thomas. We're so pleased to welcome Stefan, who is the founder of the Networking Retreat and author of a number of best-selling books, including Business Networking for Dummies. Stefan, thanks so much for coming on board today. You've got huge experience and expertise in networking. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your business.
I'm really flattered to be invited today. Even more flattered when Mike said that you have interesting guests. I was obviously waiting for the line, but we couldn't find any today, so we've got Stefan instead. That would have been a good Christmas line. But I'm Stefan. I'm the author of that book and a couple of others. As described, I speak at quite a lot of events across the UK and Europe, quite a lot of conferences and particularly sales conferences, and I train people how to network better, whether that's small business owners who want to make more sales, or people in corporate careers who want to advance their career by building a network. I exist in both of those worlds. My go-to place is the world of small business in the UK. I'm a small business owner myself, and I try and help them to make more sales, to understand how to network in the 21st century. So not just face-to-face networking events, but this relatively new thing, social media as well. That's me.
Really good. I want to touch on the digital side of it as well in a minute, Steph. But I want to go back a bit first. When was it you first realized the power and importance of networking, and what got you onto the subject in the first place?
I was first invited to a networking event at the end of 2005. I was an estate agent at the time, and networking just terrified me. That first breakfast networking experience at the Fleece Hotel, which is half a mile in that direction as I sit here. But I was really terrified and didn't know that I was going to have to stand up in front of a group of people and introduce myself. I'd never done anything like that before. Fast forward the middle of 2007, May 2007, and my estate agency career ended. I set up a little business running a local magazine in town. Actually, that's what I was doing, and realized that networking might be a route to market for that. There were a lot of, if I went to a networking event here in Witney, my local town, the local accountant was there, the local conveyancing solicitor, etc., etc. It was a good place to meet people who might advertise. What happened was that the reputation which I started to get, I started going to networking events really very regularly. I started to get a reputation more about understanding how to make sales at networking events, more so than for the magazine that I was running. So the magazine didn't actually last very long. and people started asking me to explain to them how to network. The networking group that I was a member of, For Networking, they were massively expanding at the time. They first asked me if I would look after, those were the words, the Whitney group for them, then the groups that we had in Oxfordshire, and that was 2007. By sometime in 2008, I was running 27 groups, networking groups across Oxfordshire up to Birmingham, Northamptonshire, and so on. So I was training quite a lot of members how to get better at networking, and it just evolved. That became the business. People started asking me to speak at their networking events and their business shows as well. And then in 2012, 5 years later, I was speaking at a business show at Excel in London, and the authors of the publishers, of those books were in the audience, and they took me aside that evening and asked if I fancied writing a book for them. I guess that was it. If that's a 5-year story, the world has speeded up quite a lot since then. But since going to my first event in 2005 and hating it, to being asked to write the book in 2012, and then the world took off a little bit for me. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. How did you find the experience of writing the book?
Now, that's an interesting question. I didn't like the experience of writing the book. However, to be fair to Wiley, the publishers, they, at the time when I wrote Business Networking for Dummies, I was one of 1,800 Dummies books. So they've got a process, as you would imagine. And the writing was actually quite laborious. It's just over 100,000 words. I had 4 months to write it. So doing the maths on that one isn't difficult. It's about 1,000 words a day, which on good days doesn't feel difficult, but you don't have 7 good days in a week. So getting the words out was quite challenging. A little bit of trivia, which means something to me, is that the way that Dummies asked me to write the book is that we wrote the table of contents first, and then I could write the rest of the book in whichever order worked for me. So we spent some weeks at the beginning writing a very detailed table of contents, and then all I had to do was write the content to fit into those sections, chapters, and pages, and write it with the help of the Dummies editors in the Dummies style. So it was 3 or 4 hours of writing every day, on top of a very, very full-time, by then, directorship of a networking organization. It was working with American editors, who I have to tell you are really brutal when it comes to English humor, particularly because the book has to be international. Any humor that wouldn't work, they just told me straight away, and told me really quite bluntly as well. So I got used to waking up every morning to incredibly robust feedback on what I'd written the day before. So it was writing 1,000 words a day, and also dealing with the feedback, for want of a better expression, from the editors. So the actual experience, the process, I celebrated when I finished it, but of course I was really proud to have written a book. I think that, and it's 10 years since it was published. It was published in 2014. So I've enjoyed that process of the book being out there for a decade, much more so than I enjoyed actually writing it.
It's added a lot of, a huge amount of credibility to what you offer and what you do, Steph. But one of the things that struck me about what you said about your first networking event was how uncomfortable you felt. I think you said you hated it. Was that right? But it's interesting, because that's similar to the way I started networking, in the sense that when I was a full-time employee, when I was a finance director, I consider myself to be quite good with people. I'm an extrovert. I like speaking to people. I like speaking to new people. But I'm far more comfortable doing that in a natural kind of non-business environment generally. Certainly, I was that way, a few years ago. However, when I set up the FD Consultant, and it was my own business, I had to put myself out there. I struggled a little bit with that idea of doing that, and in a way, I felt that networking was something I wasn't particularly comfortable with. It was an area that I felt wasn't, I wasn't being authentic, if that makes sense. And I struggled a little bit with that. I had a small LinkedIn following at the beginning. How do you overcome that perception? The networking is that kind of artificial construct, if you like, to then transform it into something that is firstly comfortable, but then is immensely powerful for your business. How have you done that?
I believe it's all about the word networking, because if we're just going somewhere and meeting a group of people, broadly speaking, we can be comfortable with that, or we can at least get comfortable with that. If we're going to a pub or going somewhere else and we're meeting a group of people, some of whom we probably know, some of whom we don't, we'll work that out. But as soon as we put this title networking, the label networking around it, it seems to scare people. And something that a number of things that I've learned. The first one is that I set my bar very low. I didn't at the beginning. I think that a huge problem with going to networking events is that people set their bar very high. They think that they have to achieve a lot during the duration of the networking event itself. And when you do that, it's almost like you're on edge all the time, because what most people seem to think a networking event is about when they first go is about making sales somehow, or taking that next career step. But actually, when I go to a networking event now, I'm going to one tonight, all that I'm aiming to do is make contact with some people and make a connection with those people so that I can continue the conversation afterwards. So instead of putting myself under pressure to achieve anything tonight, all that I'll be doing is chatting to people, and we'll get on. I'm sure we will. It's that sort of event, and we'll exchange contact details. We'll probably connect on LinkedIn as part of the conversation, and therefore I've removed any pressure to do anything apart from really just converse with people. When I first started going networking, when I looked at a lot of the advice, there were all of these clever questions to ask people at the beginning and conversation openers. And I have honestly found that just being significantly more human when I get to a networking event, most of the networking events I go to are in Britain, of course. So talking about the weather, talking about the parking or the problems on the train getting there, those universal conversation openers that just get us talking, I've found those much more authentic, simpler, and less artificial than the traditional networking questions which people were being trained. I thought at first I was getting it wrong, because I just going in and talking to people felt so natural to me, and yet putting a networking label on it and thinking that I had to qualify people or see if people were my target market, that was the bit that just felt really, again, to use the word that you used, really artificial to me. So I stopped doing that and just started talking to people. And really, when I work with people, I think that the bit that resonates most is that we don't have to achieve anything there and then. We've got literally the rest of our lives to converse with the people that we meet. So I set the bar very low, and I suggest other people do the same as well.
I think that's a really good way to put it. As you answered that, I was kind of thinking about my journey, and your point about being human, and that is the authentic bit, isn't it? And kind of managing your expectations, so you're not going to go in and make lots of sales, or kind of make I suppose, lots of advantageous connections immediately. It's about, nurturing, starting a relationship that can develop for later. And for me, that definitely sits more comfortably, I think. Mike, how have you found networking, from that perspective?
Honestly, I think I know we met Steph a few weeks ago in preparation for this, and I think, Steph, I told you I'm rubbish at networking, I don't like it, and you reframed it for me. And I think it's that reframing that you did last week and that you've just articulated. It's something that I think people misalign. I think people see a lot of these events, networking events, as sales events, and I think changing the narrative is actually quite an important approach, and then you become more about a human event. And I think touching on your digital comment when you first described what you're doing, how do you think that changes in a digital world that we're working in now?
I've heard of Twitter, and I watched a Gary Vaynerchuk video.
Okay.
Anyone who knows, I've got a Gary Vaynerchuk book. Well, I've got several Gary Vaynerchuk books here. Gary Vaynerchuk's explanation of what social media was completely changed my approach to it, and I have to give him credit for that, because in early 2008, I think, when I saw the Gary V video, the Gary V breakthrough video, the one where all of a sudden everyone had heard of him, I suddenly realized that social media and networking were two sides of the same coin. They weren't separate things, but actually it was Twitter at the time. Twitter was what was big news at the time. And it just gave me and everyone else who saw it this huge opportunity to keep in touch with people in between networking events, and to keep in touch with people in a very soft way. So instead of meeting someone at a networking event and then emailing them every week to say, "Are you ready to buy from me yet?" I realized I could just connect with all of these people on Twitter, all of these people that I've met. And LinkedIn is exactly the same, more so now in 2024. LinkedIn is huge in that world. I could meet people, connect with them, and then keep in touch with them. But even better than that, I could keep in touch with them on their terms, because if they posted something on Twitter, if they tweeted going back to 2008, I could reply to that, join in that conversation, and just remind them that I existed. And the serendipity of social media really fell into place for me in 2014. I've got the screen grab somewhere. I was talking to someone on Twitter about the fact that I send postcards to my grandmother. I use an app on my phone to send a postcard to my grandmother at least once a week. Someone else joined in that conversation, and that someone else is Wes Linden, who I've been on WhatsApp with this morning, has become a really good friend and gave me my biggest ever speaking gig through the serendipity of getting involved in conversations on social media. One of my biggest client in terms of the work that they give me, the managing director of that company is a punk himself, or an old punk, or an ex-punk. I don't know how we describe ourselves, but we found that we've got that in common. And actually, so much opportunity has come to me through just treating social media, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads. You'll have noted that I left out the other one that I'm not on anymore, and everyone else has left. But just the opportunity to join in and be part of conversations there. And I use, particularly my Facebook, I use that to try and deliver value to the people who are good enough to follow me. So if the point of my posts is designed to give them value, then hopefully they carry on following me. And some of those over time turn into clients. That's been the incredible part of it.
And do you see any trends within the technology? There's obviously an evolution in platforms that people are used. Do you see any trends changing, or ideal platforms for ideal audiences and companies, or new platforms and new ideas, particularly with AI that's going on at the minute, that might change how networking works in a digital world?
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, we've talked about one of them. The Twitter was big news in 2007, 2008. Of course, the the conversation continues to shift. I think that's the thing which always intrigues me, that back then, 2008, you poked people on Facebook, and Facebook was pretty much an extension or an evolution of what used to be Friends Reunited or MySpace, and people were using Facebook for quite frivolous purposes. Of course, Facebook has gone through a huge evolution, and a lot of the conversation shifted there. Instagram, which was originally just about making your photos look pretty, that's become a place where huge conversation goes on. LinkedIn has gone from quite a dry platform to a very content-rich platform in that time. And I can see that LinkedIn and Facebook are really in competition for the business market, with LinkedIn winning currently. In terms of a trend that I notice, small business owners tend to exist on Facebook, whereas employees, C-suites, other people in corporations or in organizations tend to exist on LinkedIn. So a real trend that everyone needs to get their head around is that it's not about which platform I prefer, it's about which platform my prospective clients are on. So I spread myself pretty thinly. Gary Vaynerchuk's expression that marketers ruin everything. So TikTok started off as very lighthearted. TikTok started off as a very different thing to it is now. But I see people who do high level management consulting, leadership training, human resources existing on TikTok now and bringing on huge followings, which result in actual work for them. What's happened recently in terms of a trend that I've been really interested in is that Meta launched Threads, and then Blue Sky is there as well, both, if you like, as alternatives to Twitter. Now a lot of people have come away from Twitter, but what really intrigues me about this, to finish off this little monologue, is that we never know which is going to be the next platform to take off. So I've got a policy of getting involved on the new platforms, usually in just a small way. Usually what I'll do is land grab my handle so that I can have the same handle as everywhere else, start conversations on there and see what happens. Some of them, Instagram, Threads as an example, have taken off. Others, SoundCloud, I got very into. Anchor, I got very into. Neither of those particularly took off. But actually looking at what's new, because none of us know which is going to be the big social media platform in 5 years' time, and it will continue to change. It will be just as you get used to one, another one will come along and we'll all need to hop over there. That's going to be the nature of social media into the future. You heard it here first.
Brilliant.
We've heard it first here, absolutely. So sticking with that technology theme, and I've noticed from, spending time with you, Steph, that, technology is something that definitely is a big interest, of interest to you. How do you see the future of networking evolving? So we talked about platform hopping as new ones emerge. Have you thought about future patterns of networking or other influences there?
Yeah, we can look at what's happened recently. So we can look at networking in a number of different ways. Networking organizations, so companies that exist to sell networking as a business model for them and as a way to market, particularly for SMEs. That landscape changed massively when the world was locked down, as you would imagine. Before that, literally the day before that, pretty much every single networking event in the world was taking place face to face. Things like Zoom, Google Teams, Hopin, all of the other platforms which now exist were there then, but they weren't really being used. Of course, lockdown, the pandemic, forced us all onto Zoom and Teams and Meet and so on. And then that became partially the norm. So a sea change in the last 5 years has been the massive transition from solely face-to-face networking events to, for quite a while, solely online virtual networking events, to now this hybrid approach where BNI still remains the biggest player in the world, the biggest networking organization in the world. But even some BNI groups now have a hybrid structure where they meet, for example, 3 times a month on face-to-face and then once a month virtually, or the other way around. But they do a hybrid version anyway. The other thing which has happened is that partly, I think, because of that, regional networks, particularly in my experience in the UK, really strong regional networking organizations have taken off. I can name Cotswold Networking around here, Revitalised Networking up in the central belt of Scotland. They really weren't there in any way, shape or form pre-2020, but they've really come into their own. Places like the Institute of Directors, the Federation of Small Business, even chambers of commerce and local enterprise partnerships, which now call themselves growth hubs, they've also seen the power of networking, not just to bring value to their members, but also as a sensible route to bring new members into them. So the choice is absolutely massive. And this trend towards hybrid networking, where some meetings are face-to-face and some meetings are held virtually, those have made the choice for people, and also the convenience of it all much more than it was 5 years ago.
Excellent, thank you. One more question before I pass on to Mike. I've kind of taken over a bit here. Steph, we've built up a friendship over the years since we first met. Since then, I've kind of learnt about your personal story and your, the various challenges that you've had in your life. One thing that I've observed and experienced is, I feel that the business network that you've helped build around yourself has actually helped you personally as well navigate some of these challenges, both obviously from a business perspective, but also in some of these personal kind of situations as well. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it would be. I'm just going to take a really brief pause before I answer that question and say that, which I really hope you don't mind me saying to the audience as well. I think we're having some problems with LinkedIn, but at the same time, I know that we are live on my Facebook personal profile, as well as on Romesh and Mike's channels as well. If any of my Facebook followers have got any questions, please feel free to pop them on the comments on my Facebook as we're going out live. We won't, I don't think, be able to put them up on screen, but what I will do, if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my screen to see what's happening on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you've got any questions for me, or Mike or Romesh, pop them in the comments on my Facebook and I'll keep an eye on it. To answer your question, Romesh, the support of having a strong network has been really quite incredible and really took my breath away earlier on this year. I had to take some time off sick this year. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in my 20s, but this year for the first time it's been quite a challenge. The people rallying around me from my business network, from people I'm connected with, from people who pay me money for services, the people who've been really kind to come out in force and just offer support. It took me by surprise, I guess because it's me, but it probably shouldn't have done, because all I've seen on my networking journey is people wanting other people to succeed. That seems to be a commonality that actually, from going along to my first networking event and being terrified of the other people in the room, because I was absolutely convinced they were more successful than me, they were richer than me, but actually finding in the almost 20 years that I've been doing this now that people are generally very positive and supportive of other people around them. They want to lift them up. They want everyone to succeed, not just because of the internal economy, but the internal economy is worth mentioning, because the more that everyone else succeeds, the more the money flows around within your network. But people just want people to succeed, and it's really heartening to see that. And people have really come out in force when I was ill. The other bit of support that you find in network is that you learn stuff. I've had conversations just this week with people within my network, and just in conversation, I learn things which are incredibly useful to me and my business. So the support has been explicit support, people actually wanting to literally look after me when I wasn't very well, and also the less tangible support, the fact that you've just got this huge group of really clever people around you that you can continue to learn from. I think running a small business is lonely. I know you've got a network of people within your business, Romesh, but just running a small business, which for most of us means spending quite a lot of time in a back bedroom where we style our office. It's when I was an estate agent, which I was for 20 years of my career, if I was having a down day, I could phone the manager of another branch and say, Steve, how's it going for you today? And we would have a little bitch and put the world to rights and talk about how the management were wrong in everything that they're doing. When you run your own business, you haven't got the manager of the other branch to pick up the phone to. And I've found that a really big benefit of networking, having people like you and various other people around, that when things are going well, people are applauding, and when things aren't going well, people are offering genuine guidance and support. I think that's been an incredible part of it for me and for many others.
That's really interesting, Steph. I'm going to ask you a slightly related question, but you've made me think of something. What's your view on the kind of, you talk a lot about the authentic relationship there. I pulled the word authentic out of it, but what's your view on the current trend around the use of AI to really write people's content online and the authenticity that people are putting into this? I've seen experiments where it's been successful, it's not been successful, but I guess what you're telling the story here is authenticity is what drives the kind of network that you're trying to pull together as an individual.
So I guess it's wrong for me to be judgmental on this, because I'm a very, very fast writer, typist. When I write a book, a chapter of the book will exist in my head, and my job is just to get it out of my head and to type it. So I can write many hundreds of words very quickly, and I appreciate that that's a skill that I didn't realize that I had until recently. One of those things that because you just do it yourself naturally, you don't realize that everyone else's mind doesn't work like that. So I've spoken to a number of people who heavily lean into AI to write things for them. I've had a lot of conversations about AI this week, which have blown my mind, with people who understand it a lot better than me. There's a massive opportunity there, of course. Whole books are going out there now written by AI, but it's the author rather than AI which is being paid for it. But you are uploading quite a lot of your intellectual property to the hive mind is one thing which I'm going to throw in there, because people upload what they've written into, for example, ChatGPT. That exists out there somewhere now, and it's not necessarily yours anymore. People have always used tools. People have used ghostwriters. So I'm not going to be judgmental about people using AI as a ghostwriter to write a book for them. A challenge that I have particularly is that a lot of people read my content online and indeed in the books. And if they know me, they say that they can read it in my voice, because I write broadly the same as I speak. So my challenge with AI is that I haven't yet been able to get it. I have tried. I haven't been able to get it to replicate what I would consider authentically me. And therefore, if I put something out there, it wouldn't sound like me. what I am using AI for, I'm using some of the tools such as CapCut, for example, where if I'm going on a trip to London in the next 24 hours, I'll be doing some work stuff. We'll also be doing some traveling and so on. I'll bung a load of photos into CapCut and it will put those photos along with a back-in music track and turn them into a really exciting video. And I'm enjoying using AI for that. I'm enjoying using AI as a virtual sounding board as well. For a really good example would be thinking about the chapter structure for my next book. And I've talked to both ChatGPT and Sintra about that and talked to them about what the book is and asked them to suggest content which would be worthwhile in the book. And they gave me a number of ideas which I hadn't thought of as things that would be useful for the book that I'm writing. So as a useful sounding board and as a research assistant, I had a meeting with someone this week and said to ChatGPT, I said, here's the guy on LinkedIn. Can you tell me anything else you can find out about him? And ChatGPT came back with a number of sources that this guy had written papers and so on, which made it really quick for me to research someone before I went into a conversation with them. So I think AI can be used authentically. I'm still on the fence a little bit about people who are writing whole books with AI, because I wonder whether that's really their knowledge or whether they're just pulling the knowledge from the hive mind. And even then, when I say I'm on the fence, I've got an Evernote notebook full of scraps of bits of stuff which I found on the internet, which became part of Business Networking for Dummies, things which I researched. So is it that different that I went off and found that every Pixar film has the same structure and that became part of Business Networking for Dummies? AI could have done the same research for me, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's about, I think things are changing in this space, and it's about how you maintain your Steph identity as well and use these tools to improve your productivity rather than actually becoming a face of you. Do you see a difference when you're talking about networking between a big network versus a close network of sort of people you talk to about your health issues or particular business issues? And do you think that it could be reframed differently for people? Because I think there's this automatic association with numbers of users on LinkedIn or contacts or big networking events and sales rather than actually a closed network, a closer network.
This is really personal. I know it won't suit everyone. And I think it was because I was bored in the summer when I was really quite ill. I was in hospital at the time, but I opened up on my public Facebook profile about how I was feeling one particular day, and I was in hospital at the time. I'd been in hospital for a few days. I was in a lot of pain. I was generally quite fed up with the world, and I also have an illness, ulcerative colitis, some of the symptoms of which people get a bit icky about because it's a bowel-related disease. And I opened up publicly about that, and I think at the last time I looked, there were a couple of hundred likes and equal amount of comments and so on. And I then went on a little saga of my own to talk about an illness that people aren't talking about. And I did that very publicly. And I did it partly because I was bored, and secondly because I've got a disease and lots of people have got the same disease that people don't talk about, and therefore people don't know it exists, so that people who get the symptoms are still too embarrassed to go and see their doctors. And I wanted to break some of that taboo. And the weirdest thing happened is that it's had massive business benefits, which wasn't the reason why, wasn't what I was expecting, because of course it turns out that quite a lot of people have got that thing in common with me. And the people who got that thing in common with me started rallying around me, for want of a better word, started being particularly happy that I was talking about it. And then it got me into conversations with other people who run businesses when they've got chronic illnesses. And in fact, some of the people who are really close to me, I didn't realise were running businesses, and also the numerous hospital visits and so on that go with having a chronic illness as well. And then people started wanting me to talk about that. And then people who are also running businesses with chronic illnesses have started booking onto my programs because now they know who I am. And I didn't start off for this reason, but a lot of people have said that that real authenticity, because I've always been known as someone who's quite outwardly positive, for me to come out and actually say, do you know what, I'm not only having a bad day, I'm having a bad week, I'm having a really bad month, and this year's not brilliant either. For me to come out and say that publicly, I think a lot of people felt that I was more authentic for suddenly being the positive guy who didn't have to be positive all the time. And since then, business has taken off in a way that I really wasn't expecting, and that's been quite... I had a conversation with someone just yesterday who's interested in joining my networking group, and the first thing she asked me was, how's your health? And she went on to tell me a little bit about her journey as well, and it was something that I didn't realise that we had in common, and I didn't even realise she'd been paying attention to what I was talking about. So it's not an answer to your question. I decided to go out to my very big network, thousands of people on Facebook, and talk very publicly about something that most people would be embarrassed about. But actually, it turned out to be a really positive experience, at least for me. It turned out to be a very positive experience. And broadly speaking, my number of followers and everything has gone up since I started doing so. So I'm guessing that was positive for my followers as well.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to 2 points we've raised, right? Authenticity, you being yourself, and whether the story be good or bad, and also the need to just tell human stories and be yourself. And the point you made to me about the networking, Mike, is just about being a person and talking about it and being honest. It's really interesting. Romesh, have you got anything you'd like to?
Yeah, absolutely. So normally we would invite questions from the audience, but we have had a few technical difficulties with LinkedIn, as Steph kindly pointed out. So we'll continue. And we've got some, to be honest, I've got loads of things I could ask you, Steph, based on this, and I'm sure Mike has. So that's not a problem. So one of the things I wanted to explore with you a little bit more was, you talked about being the solo the solopreneur, if you like, in your business or your multiple businesses. And it can be a lonely place, etc. But there are practical difficulties as well, aren't there? Getting all the work done that you need to do, kind of actually doing the work and then balancing off the fact that you need to get more business in, etc. How do you deal with those challenges?
That learning curve has been huge, because despite plenty of evidence to the contrary, running a business which relies on me to turn up every day, I was presuming that I was invincible. So I didn't have enough plans in place for me to be taken out of the picture, for me to become sick. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of small business owners, particularly in the creator space, in the small business to business service consultancy space, I'm sure that a lot of people haven't taken that into account. Professional speakers, all of us lost a huge amount of income when we weren't able to go out and speak because of the pandemic. So I've had to learn to put recurring income as part of the plan. With several of my products and services now, there are recurring payments on those. I'm writing more books, because once the book is written, I then get paid for it forever. I get royalties for Business Networking for Dummies twice a year, a decade since I've written it. I've had to look at how to make the business a bit more robust, so that even though I'm the face of the business, I've had to look at what happens if, either by necessity or by choice, I take a few months out of the business again in future. So that is something that I would love to explore more, to talk about more over time, because it's such a big subject. With people have heard the expression business continuity, but it is one of those things that you don't, insurance, it's something that you don't really consider the value of until it happens to you. And certainly for me, there was a bit of a what now moment when I was in hospital, thinking, if I'm not doing stuff, we're not getting paid for me doing stuff, which is how the business makes money, and that makes the business very fragile. So I've looked and am now working on various ways of making the business significantly more robust if I'm not here. And I really would urge anyone in a small business that relies on them, what happens if, because I wasn't expecting to have a conversation with my GP one morning and then be admitted to hospital in the afternoon. That wasn't on my plan or my diary for that week, and it's not on yours either. So yeah, we have to really, none of us particularly planned for the pandemic. Really, we didn't really know that was coming. The same with personal illness. What happens if? And that's where the challenge has made me. I'm approaching 55 years of age. The challenge has really made me think about the next decade and how I insure this business in all sorts of ways, from me having to take time off, and from me presumably in 10 years time taking a lot more time off. So yeah, that is something which I've thought about a great deal.
That's quite a sobering realization, isn't it? And that journey and thought process you've gone through. So what are your plans ahead, Steph? And how are you making the business more robust in that sense? And does that link in with planning for business exit at some point in the future?
I don't think business exit. I from my point of view, again, I was talking about this with someone else yesterday. I believe the world of retirement is changing quite significantly as well, with quite a lot of us deciding, again, either by necessity or choice, that we will continue working in some capacity. So from my point of view, what that looks like is me writing more books. There's no question about it. Quantity is important if you write books for a business. The Ivan Meisner, who founded BNI, he was on 30-something books the last time I checked. So he will be having he will be having a significant income from his books as well as from his other business interests, and that continues long after you've written the books. I'm also looking, using the models that are available to us from people who've written content which continues to sell even after they die. I'm looking at my content becoming a business as well, whether that is training courses which I license, or franchise, or whatever that looks like. We've got a couple of models in the UK of people who've successfully done that. People who've, like Nigel Botterill, who created the Entrepreneurs Circle as an example. Each Entrepreneurs Circle locally isn't run by him. Nigel, he's managed to scale that. I'm looking at models like that where I can scale things a little bit better than just relying on me, really.
Excellent. Thank you, Steph. Okay, so Mike, do you have anything else that you wanted to add at this point, or ask Steph, or shall I?
It's been super good to talk to you, Steph, and your time. I realise we've had some technical issues, but actually we are still live to a number of audiences. So that's good. It's been super interesting. I love the authenticity. I love your story about yourself and how doing it. And for me, who's an introvert, or more of an introvert, I kind of know that putting yourself out there is really important, and I have to force myself sometimes to do it. And I think but it's that natural voice, I think, is the takeaway that I've got. Romesh?
I'll be completely honest, Mike. I'm going to an event tonight where I am already feeling a bit intimidated by other people who will be in the room. One of the people in the room is the High Commissioner for somewhere. There will be people in the room who've been on television, and I still get that butterflies. I know mainly because a few people around me, people who are very well known to Romesh, have persuaded me I need to go tonight, but I still get those nerves, and I still deal with it, and know that every opportunity that I've had has come from a conversation at one of these events somewhere. So I continue to go to them because that's where the opportunities come from. And when I get finished tonight, I'll have enjoyed some of the conversations. I'm absolutely sure of that.
Amazing. It sounds like an incredible event, Steph.
Looking forward to it now.
Yeah.
I just told it to myself.
You've banished the butterflies. I love it. So I'm sure everyone would agree. What a fantastic session. Just to summarize, the key takeaways for me, I think, were, firstly, put yourself out there. You can create huge opportunities by leveraging and growing networks. But to do that, you have to do it properly. You have to be authentic. The authenticity and being authentic, that we've used that concept. We've covered it several times in this discussion. And I think people naturally connect with others who they feel are being truly authentic. Ultimately, Steph, I think what I'm getting is you get what you put in, right? So it's nurturing the relationships and not necessarily feeling that you're going to get everything you need or want from an initial conversation. It's the start of a journey, and you have to nurture that ongoing conversation and relationship. And for me, something else that came up here was that perception shift, which certainly resonated with me, because that was a shift that I went through in my networking journey as I've started growing my business. And that is, people do want you to succeed. And if you lean into that and believe in the authentic approach, then ultimately, there's only going to be one path, and that should be one of success. So, Steph, thank you very much for your contribution today. Some incredible insights, and thank you for also taking us through your personal journey. We'd like to thank everyone who has watched live and overcome some of the technical difficulties, or who is listening or is watching a recording later. Thank you very much. We appreciate your support. When Mike and I set up Strive and Thrive, we wanted to open up interesting discussions in the business space for ourselves to learn and ultimately share with those who are interested. We're a monthly series. We've got a great pipeline of interesting people to share their insights with you. Our next session is next month, post-Christmas, believe it or not, on the 23rd of January. We'll share more details of that over the next 4 weeks. Exciting news. We're now on YouTube and Spotify with a podcast. So those are exciting steps for us. Please look us up. A big thank you to Mike for co-hosting so brilliantly, and the rest of the Strive and Thrive team. You know who you are. Steph, again, thank you very much. See you all next time.
Thank you very much
Thanks,
for having me, guys. Thank you.
Have a good evening, Steph. Enjoy it. Let me know how it goes.
Thank you, I will.